aspirants, welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Ananta Krishna, and in this session of daily news analysis, we have picked up certain important articles from Hindu as well as Indian Express. Before dwelling on to the articles that we have chosen for today's analysis, we have one request for you all. Please hit the bell icon below and keep yourself subscribed to the Narayana IAS channel such that you may reap all the updates that we give on this particular channel for the benefit of your preliminary and main examination. And make sure that you are following these videos thoroughly such that you may clear your examination with utmost flying colors. Moving to the articles that we have chosen for today's analysis. First article that we have chosen is from the Hindu, which is titled Top 1% Indians income share is higher now than whatever it was under British rule. Published in page number 7, this is referring to the widening inequality in India and widening inequality between certain income groups. Moving to the next article, which is from Indian Express, titled An Incentive to Diversify, where they are trying to look at using MSP as a mechanism in order to make sure that diversification in the cultivation as an activity would occur. Moving to the third article, which is titled NASA craft that diverted space rock also dented it, a very important mission in order to accomplish some of the endeavors that we have over the space related aspects. Moreover, the fourth article is again from the Hindu, which is titled The Slow and Steady Rise of Mixed Reality Technology. From the prelims perspective, we will try to know what this mixed reality technology is. Last and final article is from the Indian Express titled Young and Listless, wherein the age related criteria has been taken and accordingly how the happiness is faring across the globe is what being debated in this particular newly released World Happiness Report. Lastly, we also have a section wherein we will discuss some of the questions related to preliminary and mains aspects of this examination as part of the practice over whatever that we have discussed. We shall now move to the first article for today's analysis. Coming to this article, we are focusing upon what is referred to as inequality. As you clearly know that whether it is in India or for that matter even in the entire world economy, the inequality both in terms of income and wealth has been greatly identified and we clearly know that it is getting deteriorated. We shall look into the details of this fundamental social and economic exclusion that we experience in the form of inequality in Indian economy. This particular article is important from the perspective of GS paper 3 Indian economy, where the issues relating to growth and development, and as part of these issues we may take up inequality as one such predominant exclusion in Indian economy. So this can be covered as part of what is called as issues in development. Moving ahead, look at this previous year question. This question asked in 2020 is clearly focusing upon inequality as an issue as promoted by and as exacerbated by one of the prevailing condition then we had. COVID-19 pandemic accelerated class inequalities and poverty in India. Comment. Looking at this question, we clearly understand that this wealth and income inequality report that has been published is clearly in tune with the examination requirements. Hence, we will be looking at the patterns which have been observed in this particular report through 5 fundamental charts. We shall look into the details. This wealth and income inequality in India as a report has been published by World Inequality Lab, and this particular report is clearly showing the gap between the rich and the poor, and it shows that it has widened rapidly, particularly in the last 2 decades, wherein we can now say that whatever that happened as part of economic liberalization and economic growth in the last 2 decades is also matching with this particular phenomenon of exacerbated inequality within Indian economy. As I have already pointed out, this particular report points out certain patterns. Before getting into those patterns, let us see what is the real theoretical framework within which we are discussing this particular topic. On the one hand, we follow what is called as the market mechanism, and theoretically it is being referred to as neoliberal model, where competition between the consumers and producers is consistently there. It is this competition which maximizes under this so-called market mechanism welfare of all those economic man which has been part of that particular economy. Given this, there was one concern that as the economies are growing, the inequalities were also getting exacerbated. However, we had this particular economic thinker named Simon Kuznets, who proposed that economic growth can achieve its benefits in terms of increased per capita income for all the residents of that particular economy only during the long term. So, he says even though initially the income inequality increases as income is increasing, or for that matter per capita income is increasing, we also go through this situation that the inequality is also getting increased. However, you reach a point where this inequality reaches the maximum, and from there it starts declining, and ultimately to reach a point where income inequalities or wealth inequalities have been addressed. So, he says in the long term, as the long term growth occurs within a particular economy, inequality must also over a period of this long term growth will ultimately end. Given this particular theoretical model, if you apply this to current scenario, what you would observe is it is becoming more and more clear that this particular model is not applicable, and this particular model is no more valid according to these inequality reports. Now, we shall look at in this particular framework what the data is suggesting. As you see in this particular report, the first pattern that you would observe is the bottom 50% of the population in India, which comes around 46 crore, are having an income share of merely 15% of the national income, by which it means that the 15% of the national income is getting distributed amongst nearly 50% of the entire population. Second, the middle 40% is clearly having a share of 27% in the national income. Even here also you would see that there is a discrepancy. More number of people are there, however, less amount of income is what getting distributed amongst that particular population. Now, you look at top 10%, they are having a share of nearly 58% of the national income, which is vastly high, and you would see that this is clearly demarcating and showing this gap between rich and the poor on the basis of a threshold per capita national income that we have defined. And if you look at the top 0.1%, even these top 0.1% are having a share of nearly 9.6% of the national income, meaning as you are moving ahead in terms of the top percentile from 10% to 0.1% and 0.01%, the income gap is getting widened and widened and widened. Even amongst this top 10% population, as you would see, the top 1% are sharing nearly 10% of the national income. Moving ahead, we also have a situation that if you look at the way in which this income levels for all these population groups as we have identified has increased since these periods of 1952 when we have attained our independence. Clearly, during the period when India was following the welfareist approach, where state was having the responsibility of making sure that economic welfare, social welfare of its citizens is being maintained and ensured by the state, we would see that by and large the income levels have remained the same, by which it means that even though the inequality was present, this inequality has not got widened. However, poverty has remained. Most of the efforts to eradicate poverty have been continued. On the other hand, once you start seeing a phenomenon wherein income levels for the middle 40% is start declining and the income levels for the top 10% start increasing and the income levels for bottom 50% first initially gets stagnated and then it starts getting marginally getting declined. All these phenomena would begin roughly around 1980-81, or we may say that in 1980s this phenomenon has begun. And if you recall, it is this particular period which in fact was the period when the liberalization in Indian economy has also begun. It is a common myth and notion that the economic liberalization in India has occurred from 1991-1992 financial year onwards, but keep in mind that the ground for such liberalization has already begun in 1980-81 because we were also going through similar so-called the BOP crisis, as to there was lot of crunch in order to meet our external payments obligation. Even though it did not translate into crisis, thanks to much of the remittances that we were receiving, this particular period was hence focusing upon increasing the exports, and hence they had to go for economic liberalization wherever it is required. It is this particular period of liberalization which has been begun in these 80s. You also see that it is marked with the increasing inequality or widening gap in terms of the share of national income that particular group is actually reaping. Moving ahead, you have in this particular chart where you are taking into consideration the levels of inequality since the pre-independence times. As you see that during the pre-independence era, this inequality has actually increased. However, since the independence, we see that this inequality has actually declined, wherein the share of the top 1% has steadily declined, wherein you also see that this decline has also continued up to these periods of 80s. Again, you are matching with this period of state-led growth of the Indian economy and then period of liberalization within Indian economy. So, as you started generating more and more income in the economy and wealth in the Indian economy, you would also see that the richest 1% of Indians started getting more and more share in the national income, by which it means that this wealth is being generated and this notion of trickle down effect, as we have to get as per this so-called Kuznets curve, is not actually occurring. Moving ahead, you have in this particular chart the comparison between the income shares of top 10% and top 1% for few select group of countries. As you see in this particular chart, clearly it is the India which is in fact having more share of national income for their top 1%, as you see here, in comparison with all these select countries, which in fact includes those which are being touted as developed countries and those which are even part of the BRICS group, which we say that are rapidly emerging economies. Amongst all these, when top 1% are having more share in terms of national income, then it means that over time their income has increased, which in fact further exacerbated income and wealth inequality in India. Moving ahead, in the last chart, you also have where if you look at the percentage of average income in China and Vietnam as a percentage share of India's average income, I repeat, the average income of China and Vietnam, which means the per capita income, as a percentage share of India's average income, you would see that it is both of these are getting more income than the average income that you have in India. Given this, we have to now draw a parallel between these two situations, that even though the average income has not increased within India in comparison with China and Vietnam, whereas in China and Vietnam it could increase thanks to the fact that there is more stricter regulation as it is observed. On the other hand, there is also one criticism that both of these countries could get increase in the incomes, however, with lesser amount of inequality because they were having a kind of authoritarian regimes in these two countries. As a gist, if you look at this entire scenario, clearly we find that inequality as a fundamental exclusion has clearly got widened amongst various population groups in India. Second, we have to clearly now establish that this so-called Kuznets curve, which predicted that the long-term growth rate in the economy would also address the burdening inequalities in that particular economy, is no more valid. It is these two which are learnings of this particular topic. Moving to the next article, we will look into the mechanism of minimum support price as a market intervention mechanism, whereby rather than having the current structure of MSP mechanism having its influence over the agriculture sector, we are looking to devise a modified mechanism in which its role must be to make sure that as a market intervention mechanism, it is able to cause diversification of crops in Indian agriculture scenario, whereby this diversification of agriculture is giving us prominence to particularly the pulses as such which are required and millets in order to meet not just the food security but nutritional security. On the other hand, it must also make sure that there is rise in the farmers' incomes. However, in this particular article, by looking at the scenario of agriculture in Punjab, why MSP mechanism is in fact failing to achieve this objective of diversification in crops, and hence making sure that their incomes are increasing sustainably by focusing upon nutritional security, which is much required for Indian economy. We shall look into the details. This particular article, as we know, is important from the mains perspective for the GS paper 3, wherein you have this direct topic related to direct and indirect farm subsidies and also including the MSP mechanism. Look at this particular previous year question asked in 2020. How do subsidies affect the cropping pattern, crop diversity and economy of farmers? What is the significance of crop insurance, minimum support price and food processing for all small and marginal farmers? If you look at this particular question, they have had certain sections included, clubbing together. They are trying to look at the possibility of certain scenarios. You see that they have asked about this question from the MSP perspective, food security perspective and also insurance perspective, particularly for the purpose of small and marginal farmers. Looking at this nature of the question, this particular article that we are discussing is also important from the mains examination point of view. Take this particular context. We know that the farmers are protesting, they are demanding the legalization of MSP mechanism, that is minimum support price mechanism, whereby the focus now is upon the scenario or state of agriculture in the state of Punjab. What is that particular status? We shall look into it. First of all, in Punjab, out of the entire territory that they have, 82% of it is a net sown area. What is net sown area? Looking at the entire territory, whatever the area which comes under this possibility of cultivation, where this cultivation as an activity occurs, we refer to it as net sown area. So, out of entire territory, 82% of territory in agriculture is net sown area, by which it means that the human intervention over this entire territory in the form of cultivation is at its maximum extent already. Second, the gross cropped area is around 7 million hectares. Why this gross cropped area is being considered? Net sown area, as I said, is giving you the data related to how much of area is come under cultivation, but gross cropped area will give you how much the times the cultivation has occurred, by which it means that if there is a 1 acre land, if I am able to cultivate over that land 2 crops or 3 crops, then the gross cropped area would be either 2 acres or 3 acres. So, it depends upon how many croppings have happened over that particular territory. So out of this entire territory, which is nearly 82% being the net sown area, we have used it in such a way that this gross cropped area is coming around 7.8 million hectares. Third, this would be possible because 91% of this net sown area is seeing what is referred to as multiple crops. This is where the crop intensity for that particular state of Punjab is at this level of 200%. And as you know, much of this is because of the possibility that all this particular territory is irrigated one. Moreover, given this fact, you know that this forest cover has come down to this meager levels of 5%, giving you the hint of the much ecological imbalance that would be possible in this particular state. Alongside, you also have to the extent of 11% all the barren land. And if you observe, given this scenario, you would observe that there is the increase in fallow land in the last 12 years, and this increase is nearly double whatever that was there earlier. Moreover, all these possibilities are leading us to one particular aspect, that is the cultivation of wheat and rice. Keeping in mind both of these are water intensive crops. Alongside this, what you see is out of this entire gross cropped area, 45% is going to wheat and 40% is going to rice, meaning both of these together are giving you 82% as the in its entirety covering this gross cropped area, which is telling you that this state has become a water intensive cultivation state by many proportions. This would tell you why this forest cover being reduced, why barren land is also getting increased, and why fallow land is also getting doubled, because of not only the irrigation but also because of utility of those entire chemical fertilizers that they are used to use over these cultivation activities. And here if you observe, the rice cultivation has increased from these levels of 2.7 million hectares to 3.1 million hectares. Now, why are we looking at these numbers? Keep in mind, these numbers are not important for your exam, but why are we looking at these numbers? What are we trying to bring out of these numbers? We are seeing it now. What you see is, these are some of the crops which are cultivated in Punjab. Out of this, if I take into consideration the average crop yield per hectare of all these crops, rice, maize, gram, mustard, moong, bajra, sunflower and sugarcane, you get these particular values. For average crop yield, whatever we get for rice per hectare, if I multiply it with the minimum support price that has been announced by the union government, this is the sum that I get as income per hectare. You see here clearly that except for rice and sugarcane, of course along with even the wheat, you don't see any other crop giving them any remunerative income in comparison with both of these. Given this, the natural tendency in the presence of what is called as irrigation facilities and also availability of all those chemical fertilizers, the tendency of the farmer to go for cultivation of rice, wheat and sugarcane would be a natural one, by which it means that MSP mechanism, which is a market intervention mechanism, which is meant to ensure that there is crop diversification, is unable to do it because the MSP that has been announced for various crops are incentivizing some of the crops more than whatever has to be the objective that we must have in the form of increasing pulses cultivation or millet cultivation. And hence, this article is arguing that there is more inclination, particularly in Punjab, towards these water intensive crops. Now you go back to this particular aspect. So even though you have this situation of 82% of the land as net sown area and gross cropped area being 7.8 million hectares, 91% of these seeing the multiple crops, much of the times these multiple crops are tending towards rice and wheat alone, and sometimes even the sugarcane. This becomes the fundamental problem as we see. Hence, what we must do is the question now. The way forward that is being suggested in the place of legalizing MSP, how it has to be actually rationalized and how to address this particular aspect. As this focus is on increasing the farmer income, for every average yield that you are getting for any crop over a unit cropped area, your focus must now shift towards increasing the crop yield, that is not production but increase in the productivity. So if you are able to get this, then the focus can shift towards even pulses and millets, whereby per unit productivity for these crops must exorbitantly increase. Secondly, even though the cultivation towards rice and wheat might continue or sugarcane might continue, the area under their cultivation can reduce when you increase the productivity of these crops, such that you would reduce the area and focus on cultivating either pulses or millets or otherwise over the land which can be clearly attributed to these particular crops, wherein whatever the earlier production that used to happen with respect to rice is also continuing. Second, for this, the state must invest a lot in the R&D infrastructure, particularly towards pulses, oil seeds and horticulture. On the other hand, when a farmer is able to move towards these new or diversified crops, then as you see in that particular table, he will be getting lesser income because of this diversification that he is pursuing. It is this which has to be funded by the state, whereby whatever that income gap that is being seen when he has diversified for a reasonable time period of 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, this viability gap funding must be ensured. Third, the focus must also shift towards livestock such that it can act as an insurance mechanism for the farmers in any eventuality of failure of any other crop. Then your strategy to use MSP mechanism must be in such a way that the increase in this MSP must make sure that the focus towards the other crops and crop diversification is clearly occurring, whereby you try to make sure that the MSP that you have announced for either paddy or for the wheat or the sugarcane is lesser than whatever the MSP that you are announcing for either pulses or millets. And this less than as an attribute that I am referring to must be considered in such a way that as rice, wheat and sugarcane being water intensive crops, being the ones which use more of chemical fertilizers, the utility of these two must also be taken as a component, as a cost, and accordingly the incentivization through MSP can be reduced for these crops and can be increased for those which are water efficient and fertilizer efficient. It is this which can bring about the necessary crop diversification in the Indian agriculture as on today. Moving to the next article, we shall look into this space mission conducted by NASA in order to have an experiment wherein whenever an asteroid is coming towards Earth, can we protect Earth from such incoming asteroid is what they were trying to experiment. We shall look into its details. This article is important from the preliminary point of view, both the current events of national and international importance, and also this article can be considered as important even for the main examination. You can look at this previous year question to understand this. How does the Juno mission of NASA help to understand the origin and evolution of Earth? 150 words question asked in 2017. As you see this, any such mission would also become important for your exam that can be asked under your S&T section. We shall move to the context. As I already pointed out, this so-called DART spacecraft has been sent in order to have a dent over this particular asteroid Dimorphos in 2022. They wanted to check the possibility of changing its trajectory, number one, and number two, they also wanted to see whether this hitting of the object by this particular space mission will have an impact on asteroid or not. It is this which has been seen as this context in order to discuss this particular mission. What is this so-called NASA's DART mission? As I've already pointed out, double asteroid redirection test is what is written in acronym DART, and this double asteroid redirection test mission has one particular aim, as we have seen, in order to demonstrate the capability of altering the trajectory of what is called as asteroid in this particular case, but in general of a celestial object. As you all know, asteroid is a rocky object within the space, similar to Earth or similar to any other planet. It will also be revolving around the sun, and in general we also know that this asteroid belt itself is found within this space between the Mars and the Jupiter. Second, when they had this particular test to be conducted, they had only one thing in mind: to prevent any potential collision with Earth in any eventuality of day coming towards the planet Earth. What this dimorphos is? This dimorphos is a natural satellite or moon of this near Earth asteroid named as Didymos, number 1. Number 2, remember this dimorphos has a diameter of about 170 meters, a very small one. Second, this Didymos diameter was approximately 780 meters. Third, as you clearly know, this mission has been successful in showcasing this possibility of deflecting any celestial object, such that any potential collision that may occur can be prevented. Moving ahead, we have this collision as an experiment where this dart could transform dimorphos from a shape resembling plump ball to triaxial ellipsoid. This is where we try to understand that yes, we could create a dent. Second, this change, whatever has been attributed to dimorphos, this rubber pile composition has allowed it to undergo this easy transformation. That means the physical shape of the object in any such experiment and in any such eventuality of defending planet Earth will also matter. Third, as you clearly see, a rubber pile is a celestial body that consists of numerous pieces of debris together, which have coalesced under one particular object, which is under the influence of gravity. Moreover, this collision would also shorten the orbital period by 15 seconds, indicating that there is change in its orbital dynamics. Moreover, this gradual decay in dimorphos orbital period, as we saw, post this particular impact, can be attributed to this ongoing loss of debris or the loose debris that it has accumulated together from its system, whereby its angular momentum and also the orbit contraction has occurred. It is this put together is telling us that such experiment is going to be vital in defending Earth in an eventuality of any such celestial object hitting planet Earth. Moving to the next article, we look into the details of what is referred to as mixed reality in the context of release of a particular product by Apple, which is referred to as Vision Pro, and the Apple has actually referred to it as the spatial application apps, spatial computational apps, rather than calling it whether it is mixed reality or virtual reality or augmented reality. This is what actually raked up this debate over what is called as mixed reality, because most of the tech enthusiasts were referring to this Vision Pro as mixed reality device. We shall look into the details. This article is important from preliminary point of view and main point of view, where in mains examination, development of science and technology and their implications and applications in everyday life can be a possible question. And for the preliminary, we know that these current events of national and international importance can be asked. Moving ahead, what is the previous year question that is going to tell us? Asked in 2019, in the context of digital technologies for entertainment, consider the following statements. In augmented reality, a simultaneous environment is created and the physical world is completely shut out. Second statement, in virtual reality, images generated from a computer are projected onto real life objects or surroundings. Third one, AR allows individuals to be present in the world and improves the experience using the camera of smartphone or PC. Fourth, VR, that is virtual reality, closes the world and transposes an individual, providing complete immersion experience. Clearly, what we are studying now is important for both preliminary and main examination. What is the context? As I have already said, Apple has launched Vision Pro, which is in fact being referred to as a mixed reality headset that combines what is called as virtual reality and augmented reality. We shall look into its details. Whenever you call something as mixed reality, as I said, it combines both virtual reality and augmented reality. What you see is there is a human being, and this human being is utilizing this ability of computational applications and computational experience, whereby whatever the environment he has, it also being translated into the possibility of computational measurement, and accordingly the intersection of this will create what is called as perception. This perception alongside the conventional reality will be occurring when this computer is interacting with the human being. When all of these three are occurring together, you are creating what is referred to as mixed reality. So, this mixed reality is an immersive experience as an individual is going through because of the intersection of virtual reality and also the physical reality. Immersive experience here means that an individual virtually is being surrounded by certain objects and he experiences this when he is undergoing this particular reality. Second, as we have understood this clearly, merging of this real and virtual worlds will be occurring. Second, this integration into real world of the virtual objects to experience this mixed reality will also be done, whereby you also see that virtual elements can be manipulated and also interacted with this by this particular human being, just like you are interacting with any physical object. This is what makes it a realistic experience. Moving ahead, as you clearly see here, in this augmented reality, what you would see is an interaction with the physical world, whereby there is an just overlay of digital elements. On the other hand, in virtual reality, you have a fully immersive digital environment. Putting these two together in mixed reality, what you have is it's a view of the physical world with an overlay of digital elements, whereby these digital and physical elements are interacting with each other. Both of these are contributing towards this mixed reality. Moving ahead, what this augmented reality and virtual reality are known to be in distinct with each other. One, if you look at the environment in augmented reality, this real world environment is getting augmented with virtual elements, whereas in virtual reality, it's a fully immersive virtual environment. As I said, it's a computer generated one. In terms of user experience, you can clearly see that user can see and interact with both real and virtual objects in augmented reality, whereas in the virtual reality, he is isolated from the real world and has fully immersed himself in the virtual environment. Whatever the technology that you are using in the form of display, typically this augmented reality uses smartphone or tablet or cameras or AR glasses or headsets, whereas the virtual reality requires specifically a VR head or head mounted display. HMD is what we refer to. Moving ahead, if you look at the field of view, it is limited to the camera view, but this provides a wide or immersive field of view. Moving ahead, with respect to interactions, it overlays digital content on the real world because it's a augmented reality where you have interaction of physical world or the realistic world and the virtual world. On the other hand, here you see that, as you have learnt in the previous image, there is interaction with the virtual objects and virtual environment. There are many applications of augmented reality in the form of gaming, navigation, product visualization, education and even marketing purposes. With respect to virtual reality, similar to this, you have of course gaming application. However, on the other hand, many of the times you find that this is being utilized for the simulative purposes, training purposes, similarly virtual tours and also entertainment purposes by tourism industry. Moreover, there is a requirement of awareness with respect to the physical surroundings in the case of augmented reality. However, user is clearly unaware of their physical surroundings when he is going through this virtual reality. This makes it a clear understanding over augmented reality and virtual reality, of course a combination of both being the mixed reality. What are those various applications? As we have already seen, in gaming and entertainment, this mixed reality technology is being utilized in order to give the audience a better experience. Second, in education and training, in order to make sure that the transfer of knowledge is occurring smoothly and also it is remaining with the student, they are utilizing this. Third, even in design and engineering, in order to have a flawless experience of design and also flawless implementation through engineering methodologies, this is being utilized. And also in healthcare and retail and marketing too, you find that the mixed reality is being applied. This is about this particular article. We shall go to the next article, which is about this World Happiness Report which has been released recently, and in this particular report it is specifically focusing upon age related disparities with respect to how happiness is being pursued and how happiness is being experienced by all these particular age groups. We shall look into the details. This particular article is important for preliminary examination and for main examination also under GS paper 1, where the salient features of Indian society having certain features even from the perspective of happiness can be explained. Moving ahead, look at this previous year question. Gadgil committee report and Kasturi Rangan committee report, sometimes seen in the news, are related to either constitutional reforms, Ganga action plan, linking of rivers, or protection of Western Ghats. Asked in 2016, this shows you how reports are going to be important for your preliminary examination. What is the context? Look at this. UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, they have released this report titled World Happiness Report 2024. In this particular report, they are specifically focusing upon the age-related disparities pertaining to how happiness has been experienced by various groups of the society on the basis of again the age. If you look at the nature of this report, number one, it is published annually, which is a prelims fodder that you have to know. Second, this is published by, as we have already seen, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Number three, it takes into consideration 6 variables over which the individual will assess their own experiences pertaining to these 6 particular variables. What are they? First one, the GDP per capita. Second, once you have this, you can have healthy life expectancy. Third, having someone to count on pertaining to the relational terms that we always depend upon as a social being. Fourth, freedom to make life choices indicating both political and social freedom. Fifth, the generosity where the person who may not know you is also able to show some kind of affinity towards you as an individual, giving you the sense that you are a social animal and you are living in a particular society. And lastly, the freedom from corruption. All these put together, an individual's experiences is what listed in this particular report. What are the highlights of the report? Number one, with respect to India, as you see, India has been ranked at 126th, wherein you clearly see that there are certain observations pertaining to happiness within this categorization based on age, within this categorization of gender, education, and also caste, which in fact influence the levels of happiness that they are experiencing. If you look at the neighbors' performance, China at 60th rank, Nepal at 93rd rank, or Pakistan being placed at 108, all these are faring better than India with respect to these happiness levels, including Myanmar at 108, including Myanmar at 118th position. Moving ahead, The second highlight of this particular report is that there is clear stability as to who is topping in this measurement of levels of happiness. Clearly, Finland, even though has topped, you see that all the Nordic countries, whether it is Denmark or Sweden, have been performing well with respect to levels of happiness. Moving ahead, you see that Afghanistan is deemed to be the least happy country, which has now transformed into a authoritarian country. Alongside Congo, Sierra Leone, Lesotho and Lebanon, all these nations which have certain or the other kind of instability within their what is called as territories, they are also being seen as least happy nations by their own experiences. This is most important here. Next, Israel has made it to top 5. However, you see what kind of unrest which is going on because of the conflict in the land of Palestine. Moreover, you clearly see that there are shifts in certain rankings. What is that? US and Germany have seen a decline in their rankings, meaning their population are saying that they are less happy. Moving ahead, USA has fallen from 16th to 23rd position as you see, and Germany to 24th. Alongside, as I said, most important aspect of this particular report is that it is giving you gender and age based disparities. In India, older age is associated with higher life satisfaction. This is most important for your preliminary examination. Moreover, the older Indian women reported lower life satisfaction than older men in India. This is another aspect that you have to keep in mind. Third, education and caste also played key roles. If you are highly educated, then your scope of having more life satisfaction is higher. However, whenever these castes are becoming and gender are becoming the structural barrier, it is showing certain deviations. Moving ahead, worldwide, women were less happy than men in every region as you see, with this gender gap being widened as they are becoming old aged, and accordingly you find that the happiness levels are also getting diminished or in terms of their own perception of how happy they are. Lastly, you would observe that if you compare happiness in both youth and also old age, you find that the happiness among the youth, when it is considered, Lithuania, Israel and Serbia were finding the top spots, whereas Finland is at the 7th. For those who are older people, Nordic countries seem to be doing well or faring well, indicating that there is disparity in the levels of happiness across the age groups, and at the same time it also highlights the fact that the overall well-being, when it is considered on the basis of those 6 parameters, Nordic countries are faring much better than other countries in the world. Having completed the discussion over the articles, we shall move to this section of practice questions. Take this prelims practice question. The first question: what was the primary aim of NASA's DART mission? A simple and straight question. First choice: to collect samples from the asteroid Dimorphos for further analysis on Earth, to demonstrate the capability to change the trajectory of a celestial object, to protect Earth from potential future asteroid impacts. We have discussed this answer. B is the answer for this question. Moving to the second question, the World Happiness Report is released by, as you clearly see, option A, IMF, option B, UN Conference on Trade and Development, option C, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and D, World Economic Forum. Straight question, answer is C for this particular question. Take this third question. Consider the following statements with respect to the World Happiness Report. The first statement is India ranked 126th, lagging behind China and Pakistan, which is a correct statement. Second, Denmark topped the list as the happiest country for the 7th consecutive year, while Afghanistan was deemed as the least happy country. This is an incorrect statement. Denmark is not the one which has topped it. Third statement is men were less happy than women in every region, which is also a false statement, and hence answer has to be B only. Moving to the fourth question. Consider the following differences between augmented reality and virtual reality. 1. AR overlays digital content onto the real world while VR creates a fully immersive virtual environment, which is a correct statement. Moving to second statement, users of AR remain aware of their physical surroundings whereas VR users do not, which is also a correct statement. Which of the statements given above are correct? Answer has to be both 1 and 2 and hence C is the answer for this question. Moving to the last prelims practice question. Consider the following statements. First statement, the MSP mechanism is devised to ensure crop diversification in Indian agriculture, which is a right statement as we have learnt. Second one, the gross cropped area is the total area sown once or multiple times in a given year in a net sown area that you have measured, which is also a correct statement. Hence, if the question is which of the above statements are incorrect, both of them correct and hence answer has to be D, none of the above. Moving to the mains practice question. Take this question. In the context of recently released Income and Wealth Inequality in India, critically examine the evolution of income inequality in India. A 250 word question, 15 marker. How to approach this question with our answer. In the introduction, you may write about reducing the inequality as an objective, number 1, and number 2, we see that as Kuznetsov model explains, initially the inequality would increase and then gradually it reduces over this long-term period growth rates if it is made possible, and accordingly the growth income will trickle down in such a way that over a period of time inequality gets reduced. On the other hand, you can present whatever the patterns which have emerged at least in India since the pre-independent times based on this so-called inequality which has been come as a report in the form of what is called as income and wealth inequality report. Now you can examine the widening inequality as you see in India amongst the various income groups where this widening inequality is now being established, and hence now you can conclude by saying that the trickle down effect as suggested by Kuznetsov model is ineffective and inequalities have in fact persisted and widened not just in developing countries like India but across the world. With this, we have concluded our today's DNA analysis. If you like this video, please like, share and comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS, the one-stop destination for all of your UPSC Civil Service examination requirements. And don't forget to hit the bell icon that you are seeing below such that you don't miss out of any of the further videos that we make and upload on our channel, which will be thoroughly useful for you for your preliminary examination requirements, which is going to happen very soon. Thank you one and all.